So continuing next into our workshop here, I have a series of questions that I will be asking the panelists. I don't have any specific questions directed to any specific panelist, but whoever can answer the question, please just go ahead and speak out or reach out or any resource that you have to the question. So I'm going to be asking the questions in both Hmong and English. In your current work or profession, what types or kinds of domestic violence have you come across and how prevalent are each of them in your professional experience? Can you also speak about the demographics of these cases as well? Age, gender, education level, English proficiency. Nhà đầu có giờ đây nụ, cái này nụ ủa, nếu mua bề chơi họ kế, chỉ sĩ hậu sinh, ủa cái tàu lần cho ba đời, khi cho họ kế, chỉ sĩ hậu sinh đời, mua hình bộ lịch giả, trở lên họ có báo, ủa lý có bùa thả, tàu cả đá rửa tròn đời, cho tay mình rong đi nó, xử lý cho nó nhu, con nhẹ là gì anh, chắc kế cỡ nhớ tí lịch giả, bao lụt, anh ký rong bộ lịch giả. So can one of the panelists answer this question?
So, hi everybody. Thank you all for being here and thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. So I'm an advocate from St. Paul Intervention Project. So in our agency, unfortunately, we only serve intimate partner violence as well as mothers and fathers ages 60 and up who are being abused by their children or their adult children. And so, so in my experience, that's the kind of work that I've come across and the kind of cases that I work with. And I work specifically with Hmong speaking clients because I'm a Hmong speaking advocate as well. So demographics, there's 72% of our clients are indigenous people of color, refugees or immigrants. Majority of our clients are between the ages of 22 and 46, and over 30% of them are 24 years of age or younger, and majority of victims sort of have dependent children, with 64% of those having 1 or 2 children, 32% of those 2 or 4 children, and 6% of those with 5 or more. 96% of them identify as females, and unfortunately, I know that domestic violence is not just intimate partner or not just, man and women, but 4% are identified as males. An estimated 10% were homeless at the time they reached out for services, and over 90% were assisted in sustaining their housing. 19% were new immigrants and refugees. 14% have limited English proficiency. 4% have physical, mental ability, or disability, and majority were at or below the poverty level when attempting to leave their abusive situations.
Thank you. Before the next panel speak, the one who just answered the question is legal advocate Dervain, just so in case you guys forget who she is. She's our legal advocate from St. Paul Intervention. Thank you, Dervain. Go ahead and continue.
Thank you. So, we, as law enforcement...
Can you put the microphone closer to your mouth?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better? All right. Sorry about that. We're, as law enforcement officers, I'm going to bring this back and break it down very simple just to kind of set the tone and kind of give everyone a perspective. But obviously, each law enforcement agency is different, depending on the jurisdiction or the service in the geographical area that they provide. So, for example, the police department get paid through their city. So, St. Paul Police are identified as police being paid through the city of St. Paul. Ramsey County obviously provides services through Ramsey County or any city that doesn't have their own jurisdiction or a municipality, such as Arden Hills, Shoreview. We have special contracts for that. And then obviously, you go up to the next level where state, where, that's where the state trooper, they provide services throughout the state and so on and so forth. So from the law enforcement side, we provide services me specifically, from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, we provide services throughout Ramsey County. Specifically, we put more attention on our contract cities, which is kind of that outer suburb and northern part of the kind of the metro area where a lot of our cases are coming. But that does not mean that we don't do any work throughout the county. So in terms of demographics, obviously we serve a wide different. We provide services to all the different diversities within the county, and the Hmong community is obviously a large community as part of that. And I'm going to hand out some of my colleagues to kind of talk a little bit in specific about the work in terms of investigation and case studies.
Thank you. So as my bio kind of said, I've been an investigator for the last 5 years, primarily focused on crimes against people. So that includes your domestic violence, obviously, which is extremely narrow. It's broad in that domestic violence can look different to any one person, and it is our job in the county to take each case seriously regardless of what the allegation is. So domestic violence to somebody might be verbal, it could be physical. As long as there is an element of fear in a person, that is enough for the county to get involved, or the sheriff's office to get involved. So it could be as basic as a threat to hit somebody is domestic violence. It can be an actual act of hitting, domestic violence. It could be a threat to kill somebody, that's domestic violence. So it's a very broad topic that we deal with and that we see, strangulation, child abuse. It's our job to make sure that if we're called either by a victim, a neighbor, a school teacher, whoever it is, that we are investigating it fully. But the problem is we need to know that there is a problem so that we can come and help with that.
Thank you. You've heard from Inspector Chinu Lee and Investigator Molly Grandner. Going on to the next question for our panelists. With the cases of domestic violence that comes to your attention, can you speak about the decision-making process and how cases are allocated? 喺針對有啲名嘅注書學生，我到了做中的各地，我個本下都係啲，個了這字啲家添，我有得名咯，就係咁我嘢啲家。
如果係龍工咧，就俾每一隻年時，弄落多攞就來學話要就留先嚟用，那就古英包係點咧就話啦，英包係龍工貼，俾我俾到就朋友來入อเมริกา，但是古係龍工，vì thế弄落俾隻年就自多啦，誒古係攞份到咗話 cases 多種的古路 office，份古程度我哋一咗咪英語要攞的，俾下 cultural differences，但對起。必須咧啲對籌備話，俾國企俾就咪東西呀，攞去直接攞去更多，攞冇多少東西就俾人到了呀 ，OK， 就電腦就俾唔到了就錯咗ใจ，對起嘛俾先接先到，先有啲嘛俾先到，嗱呀，先對個到時到估計個要自己咯，something like that，OK，結果咧就你點樣到嘅添，不要你點樣到嘅添，對起嘛個俾起咗添係啲ก็ภาษาก็ตรงนี้อันนี้สิอยู่ก็ชื่อตัวมาโอเคแล้วย่อให้เดียก็ภาษาตัวมาอุดมก็ตัวละเราอุดมก็อยู่ปอ so these are some of the things that is never okay John law is all constitute domestic violence there in the community so ตัวทางที่กู office มากูยังแค่เราเลยเดียตีชีเนี่ยตัวสุปอเดียตียาเนี่ยอิสุว่า你学知道了，你还知道叫弄到了，对着你去，你要去我给哈，就是嘛，你老路到了，你还要的，头你到了，还要唔的，你会有给造ใจ了，你有错造ใจ了，就造ใจ嘛，they never take 你話話 we do victim นะ，你去保係啲個啦，係你輸了又個有啲係嘛，即個要到 educate 了係啲個我哋 know is never alright with the law and the law take it very seriously，嗱，OK。
Thank you. Attorney Gong Jufu Vu. And I think probation officer, Neng Xiong, you wanted to answer that too? Yes. Yep. The question is, with the case of the domestic violence that comes to your attention, Can you speak about the decision-making process and how cases are allocated?
So I guess I can't answer that first part of the allocation of the cases. However, coming from Ramsey County, I work in the domestic abuse unit, which is we have a specific caseload which handles all the Ramsey County cases within Ramsey County. It's divided between, I believe we have 16 agents right now supervising. But the cases are, I mean, ranging from serious assaults, felony assaults, down to misdemeanor domestic. Misdemeanors would be considered low contact or lower, and then it goes up to gross misdemeanor, and then it goes up to felony level. So if it's a first-time offender, usually clients are given a misdemeanor sentence, which is usually anywhere from 1 year up to 2 years, depending on what the judge decides. And then the gross misdemeanors are 2 years, and felony level offenses can range anywhere from 5 to 7 to however many years. And how they split that up is a felony level is anything that if they're placed on probation, it's anything that's a year and a day or more. Gross misdemeanor is usually 365 days and under, and then a misdemeanor would be 90 days and below that. So I currently work with a high-risk caseload. It's a mixture of misdemeanors to gross misdemeanors to felony level. And what I mean by high risk is if they're considered high risk based on the we have this assessment tool called the LSCMI, and if they're considered high risk, they are to meet with me. Well, it's a little different now with the COVID protocols, but they meet with me twice a month. If they're medium contact, they meet with me once a month, and low contact once a month. So that's, I'll touch on more a little bit later with the other questions, but that just a little brief on the domestic violence supervision.
Great, thank you, Probation Officer Xiong.
Are you able to ask the question, I think, the question you asked, I don't think that Food A really answered it. I'd like to hear from law enforcement, especially because we know like Zia Yang was murdered after the police was called to her house 15 times in 1 year. We also know that many, and I've done work in the Hmong community advocating for domestic violence advocates for over 20 years. And I know that a lot of our victims and survivors who have died, a lot of the victims and survivors get restraining orders. And majority of the ones who have died actually have restraining orders in place. And yet they still die. I want to know how you all allocate cases and how you all are prioritizing who to respond to and who not to. As we know, statistics also show that 11% of victims and survivors who have died from homicide actually have restraining orders. And 75% of victims who call the police report not feeling safe anyways.
Thank you for your comment. Inspector Chinu Lee or one of the two investigators, you guys are more than welcome to answer her questions.
So to kind of answer your question, at least with the sheriff's office, if anytime we are called to a domestic dispute, verbal altercation, we always respond, meaning we always have an officer come to the call. Sometimes what we'll see is it called in and then somebody calling back saying everything's fine, everything's good. We still have the responsibility to go and ensure that everything is okay. At that time, we talk with both sides. If the victim says they're fine, we can't necessarily force them out of their home. We do provide services in domestic violence calls, or if someone's going to be arrested for domestic assault, the sheriff's office has a responsibility of completing a lethality form with the victim, which is a series of questions that can help us determine how big of a risk their situation is. We then provide them what our agency calls as a blue card, which is a list of resources for victims of violence, shelters, that sort of thing. We also, while we're on scene, offer to call the Tubman Center, which is a victim advocate resource, and speak with them while we're there if they want to. So we try to do a lot on the front end, right when we respond to a call, and then on the investigation piece, we only get a case if it's a felony level. So if it comes to us, chances are this family has a history of domestic violence. Somebody's been arrested multiple times before in it. We do our part, so we'll follow up with the victim. Sometimes we'll have 2, 3, 4 conversations with the victim following an arrest. We do push for those harassment restraining orders. The difference is a harassment restraining order is something that they can do on their own. You don't need to have an arrest to go apply for a harassment restraining order. That is something that you can do on your own. The no contact orders, those are what are issued by the judge. And sometimes they don't. I'd say more times than not, a judge does issue those orders. But again, I understand your concern. It's a piece of paper, right? It's not going to stop somebody from doing what they want to do. It's just what we can do on our end that, hey, if you do violate this order, we can come back to arrest you based on that. Does that answer your question?
That, and I think like my follow-up question is, then how, what we've also seen is, when the police is called, oftentimes, the victim is actually arrested and criminalized for seeking help.
Sure, and I've experienced that where both parties are arrested, both give different encounters of what happened. Typically, it's our job as patrol deputies to try to figure out who is the victim and who is the offender. Sometimes it's not crystal clear, so they do have to arrest both. I think that happens very rarely, but it does happen. And then hopefully it gets sorted out. Unfortunately, yes, they might have to spend a night in jail, but hopefully it can get sorted out then when we go to do interviews, get additional information, such as phone records that police officers just can't deal with right there on the scene. But it's our job then to investigate it and look into it a little bit further. Maybe it's follow-up conversations with other people that were there or know of the situation, photos, like I said, text messages, that sort of thing.
And then my other question, I want to hear from the Klan side of Hmong community, so maybe you could take on, so it's about the Luchi, you call Namulika, tell me allocate the case Namulika.
Thank you. I think that was actually one of the questions. I just want to add on to Molly and just make sure we get a clear picture in terms of, the arrests and whatnot, and from the law enforcement side, and then I'll hand the mic over. But thank you. Great questions. I think a lot of the stuff you talk about have so much wrapped into it, and unfortunately, the questions are not going fast enough to keep up with this. But to add on to what Molly's saying, law enforcement going to a call, when we think about government, we think that, there is a very good structure there and communication established, reports, and, detention, law enforcement, all interconnected. But most of the time, that's not the case. So for example, when there's a no contact order that a court puts out, it takes days before a law enforcement officer can actually have that in the databases they use. You know, the emergency communication does a tremendous job trying to gather that information. And before I move forward, I just want to credit the emergency communication center. Can you put your hands up really quickly? I'm going to be referencing them to a lot. They are vital to our operation on the law enforcement side. But, you know, in a perfect world, yes, you know, we should have those systems. And hopefully technology and things in the future will help enhance that. But coming back to arresting victims, obviously during your investigation, you got to remember the law enforcement officers are there at a very fresh problem, and they have to be able to dissect it, and it means to stop the imminent or immediate threat, and then proceed to do further investigations on that. So I just want to make sure that picture's there. But great questions. Thank you very much. I love the provoking questions, and hopefully we'll move the questions quick enough to kind of fill in this.
Jason Chukin, I'm going to continue on after this, and then we'll have your questions towards the end. So we're just going to keep going with our panelists and the questions here. I'm going to let him answer this question, and then we're going to continue on with our panelists and the questions we have here.
Okay, 我叫我做见咯，佢有第一笔落路內水記一號個醫生，佢實爬到這裡蒙有種嘢種子種咗咧就話，嚟又都真正有度話到這，嚟又俾人才，佢就都換咗路啲條咯。學幾俾我得明咯，好個醫生俾我做幾巴，又係啲講我得明，就係啲個全部年冇子。我攞到肚子，聽中個日子做幾次小學生，有呢係我哋咗年就只係老路都就係斷柴，你多到好個醫生，俾人到你課管人論ra，佢啲因為俾啥個做幾耐落後生到呢種個日子，貼住摸做幾工作啦，又摸做幾種嘅嘢，但係我必須要到摸咯，佢啲我係做啲。ก็มือว่าตูชายมือว่าอีหยามือว่าจีมือว่าเจ้าหายหล่อในตัวไปกุยสังอยู่ว่าป้าเน่ไปหยวนเทียไม่ก้งมือว่าตัวนี้น่าจะเก่งชาวก็ที่ไปให้เจ้าเดียเก่งชิ้นดาวชิ้นตัวในอีจงกันเนี่ยจี只是後生啦มือเจ้าเขา有ชิ้นดาวชิ้นตัวละถอนในตัวตัวกุยสังไปหยวนมือเจ้าเก่งยันอย่างผู้ตัวนี้เอาต่อไปหยวนมือในคอก่อนใน後生tàu nhau một kề khó y do chỉ hậu sáng lời bé ông ấy chế anh ấy nhẹ nhõm nhẹ có cho chỉ một tên tăng mình trong đi thâu giá ta nó khó thì bé cho cái hậu sáng nó do bị tê dầu bé đâu cũng ca mà cho để cho gì lấy mua cho cái mua mừng mỏ đâu tụ rồi là để là sai tuần sai tùy mình gì ta chỉ nhau lúc tết thì nó hậu bé có ý sinh bé cho đây nó do là chỉ khó cho tăng mình nó bây giờ sai này trong cái nhiệt chỉ cho cái dòng ý dạng của bây giờ khó còn dân hơn ra chỉ nhau hai tiếng coi theo tụi dân coi theo tụi sư là theo cái sư cũng sa thang của hồ nó đâu trồng không số tụi na giờ đến đây một tấn mình thọ chọn theo cho cái tấn mình đầu đi trong cái nhiệt chỉ tụi nhau của ý sinh bây giờ đời này cái tấn mình cũng hay tụi sa mediation theo cho culture nó đồ hồ cũng đời nó tàu trong lo là cho tới mình nó chỉ biết một đời biết một trò này còn nếu sau một tới mình lại cũng cho lù gì thả bé lời nó sẽ của trâu được họ có họ phiền này giờ chỉ trâu đâu là có họ mà nông gì của trâu nè.
Thank you to Council Da Ying for answering that question. Continue on to our questions on the panel for our panelists. Question 3 is, when working with Hmong families, what type of resources have you used or are aware of to help families across immediate care? Thổ ô đi nụ trâu chế ninh mông, có họ tàu xí cho kế ba rong đi chà, là do bộ báo cho kế ba ở dùa chớ, tàu cho chế ninh có một chua tàu kế ba đi chà.
Ủa châu này à? Yêu hai cái lủng mong nó một tuổi sợi chế ở trên đường mong cứ sai thì nên cho tuổi đó nó nên yêu bao đồ mình cả rong là ta chỉ để rồi cho nó yêu xa một giờ đó qua đó chế đồ bé trồng nhà cho gì, tôi yêu bé một tấm mình cho làm đời cho lụt lụa, li bé cho chỉ dùng cho các cháu có ý dùng, thiết thâu một đồ chỉ dùng cho các một đồ tỏ cho lầu, chỉ nên nó chỉ cho lầu đó là cho chỉ mua cái bao đồ mình cả thì nhua thì cũng yêu hai cái lủng mong thế nào cú sa thì cho tới mình nó yếu mua trong đời trên được mong ta chỉ ý cú sa có nên giá muốn chi nên ý tu dùng nhiều trong gì yếu mua trong nên trong cái địa gì là nên muốn chi tu nhiều gì ở yếu tu cho của ta lo yếu cũng chữ thứ hai là cái dầu con nhiều có gì lo yếu hư hệ có con trai xứ ta chỉ có muốn chi tu cho nữa thì tu cho yếu đời có cho tới mình yếu thiệt kiến chân chừng đó họ có yếu tố giá muốn chi cho công hậu ấy lấy mua phần theo lời bao cho tới mình yếu đời trò này trong cái nhiệt gì cho nên nó cho cái đời trò bây giờ tao có dùng muốn lấy giá theo muốn lấy chế nhóm tụ bùa còn lấy xét gì ấy này cho tới mình nó thầu mù giờ bây chúng nó lấy chế tiền này nhau ok thì giờ lúc chú thời này rồi cú lo rồi rủ thì giống một tới mình chữ sĩ luôn nên không ta chỉ nó thì giờ nó bây mong cho cái lòng một ba cho chùa nó mà giờ bây muốn lấy giá một nhà nhỏ nhà ít nhân tụ còn lấy gì là giờ bây là khó nên phải tới mình hậu là thì nên nó cho cái đời tổ ba tổ chế bây mong thì bây sĩ nhiệt gì hay chỉ tao nó nhiệt gì yêu mình nhỏ là mình nhỏ chỉ hử nhiệt hử gì ta chỉ mình nhỏ hử tụ cho nó cho ủa hử tụ nhiệt lo chín giờ hử cho công hậu hử cho dây giờ cho nó cho ủa thì giờ bây ngót đầu đi nó thì bây cho cái yếu mua cho cái mù yếu chỉ một tay mình chưa sĩ đi giá đầu trở lại nên nông ta chỉ nó cú tàu ủa theo hậu có gì sản tàu ủa cú thả bây lo nó ở trong này.
I think maybe Derving, you might have some resources for number 3 too. Maybe you want to share the resources to the community.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do, we work, so St. Paul Intervention Project, we serve, unfortunately, only St. Paul, Ramsey County. And so we work with the St. Paul Police Department. And so a lot of the things that we do, basically a lot of our cases that we receive come from the police department themselves because we work closely with the Family Violence Unit. The first thing we do when we receive a case, when we get either a crisis call or we get the police call in, the first thing we want to do is outreach to the victim to provide support. Is it either emotional support, safety planning if needed, if there's any for example, addressing safety needs like shelter, any financial needs, things like that. And if they're interested in, basically talking about transitioning out of their situation, we could talk further about it. And then so at St. Paul Intervention, we have about, I want to say 9 legal advocates that are fully trained in assisting with the criminal side of domestic violence as well as the civil side as well too. So we assist with restraining orders, and we have what's also called, I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but Bridges to Safety, which is located down at the Ramsey County Courthouse, in which victims can go and schedule an appointment to meet with an advocate for 2 hours so they can help go through paperwork if needed, or even if it's just to crisis in general, needing resources, needing some sort of direction. That's what Bridges to Safety is for. We have a 24-hour crisis line, and we also have, like I mentioned, we work with the St. Paul Police Department. We also have what's called the DV car, which is when one of our advocates from our office goes out with the sergeant, and she goes out on the cases that are more high lethality, like cases that were just in the night before or the morning before. She came into work and she'd go out to go visit the victim if possible if the suspect is in jail. Or if the suspect's not in jail, trying to attempt to visit the victim, just putting in safety measures in place and meeting them where they're at, and just basically letting them make their own decision on what they feel like they need in that moment and going from there. And then for me specifically, since I'm the only Hmong speaking advocate at my agency, I try my best to connect my clients to other agencies that can benefit from them or benefit them as well, like shelters that have specifically Hmong speaking advocates, agencies that have specifically Hmong speaking advocates, that if there's something I can't assist them with in that moment, they know that there's other resources out there that they can reach out to when I'm not there. So.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to let the audience know and the community know that we do have some tables out in the front where there's some brochures with resources and support out there. So after our Q&A here or our panelists here, you guys are more than welcome to go out to the tables and bring any of those brochures with you home for you to hand out to your families, your peers, anybody who is in need of help that is afraid or scared to come forward to get that sort of resources. So continue on to the next question. There are court ordered classes such as anger management and domestic violence prevention where perpetrators may be mandated to take after a hearing. In your personal and professional opinion, how effective are these workshops or classes in improving the livelihood of those perpetrators and families involved? 咁我依家查個，我這係撈到詞個，老母個是呢個朱幾題，幾冇到。Here, the Tiger G Tomo Gay, Jishi Hosing, or your Jane, your Domogo, Tata Zezi. Dirty go, do or goo, Zoke Sani, Taco no, Hobato Jumbo Lida, Layo Taco no, Bomo your tea, Koto your Jane no, Haya, she Hosing.
I can answer that. So whenever court order, after the hearing, there's always a probation officer that monitor you like a hawk, okay? And the anger management and domestic violence prevention program, they send you to a counselor. And the counselor, they're trained to identify the perpetrators to see how they can help that person. And they have set of criteria. And they will identify you, whether or not you will do the same thing over and over again, or maybe this is your first time, you learn your lesson. 要投了自己bỏ了投ก็บ่ได้cho counselor นะแล้วยิ่งbỏแล้วยิ่งเป้าให้เด็กก็อยู่ในโรงเรียนจ้าเลยมื้อจอเจ投ก็ว่าชี้ยอเลยแล้วให้ได้เจ there's a probation violation ก็ the probation officer ยิ่งเป้าอ่ะที่เรายิ่งbỏนะ so 投แล้วบ่ทันได้ก็ว่าcon trai này ạ, tụi này đã mà đi trai hay gì trả, nên do họ và court order nên tế nó có probation, nên tế đó, each time có đã khăn thiệt cho tới mình cũ rồi thì có những probation violation, nên không có chuẩn cho tòa sản à, thì cho nên là những trai thì là những cỡ đầu thế nào, cho đi hỏi experience nào, so how effective? I would say some of the cases that I know is very effective, because anytime that you do, it's going to go back to probation violation. Any wrong move that you make.
I can speak to that. I'm going to be very honest because I work with the criminal side with victims as well too. I think it really depends on who the person is. Like he mentioned as well too that if it's like a first-time offense and it's only one time only, they won't do it ever again. That's a miracle. But then there are cases that I've seen where victims have been abused for many, many years in which their abusers have very extensive criminal history in which they're continuing to abuse no matter what, and they're going through all these systems and all these programs and everything, and it seems that these things are not helping. So in my opinion, I would say, honestly speaking, it really depends on the person and who the person is and whether or not they're willing to abide by it. Just basically like a court order, restraining order. For a lot of the victims I hear from, and I'm speaking from, my experience working with Hmong victims and our Hmong participants, a lot of them say that their abusers tell them, it's just a piece of paper. I could just shoot that piece of paper, And so, just basically kind of the same concept. It just depends on who it is.
Okay, well, cô sai để cho cái cỡ nó mà do này do cho lùa để do ba tàu nè vì thế có một mua ít chỉ và có chơi chầu nhớ đâu tây giả có và đâu chơi chầu và mua cho chơi kia ta chỉ họ chơi chân cho lùa do bao lên đó ta chỉ biết chân lầu cho chỉ bao cho chạy đầu thì do nó lo tàu qua tàu chơi để biết tàu mua vì thì nó do hai năng tư do tàu chát chạy nó cho chạy đầu nó hai năng đầu trâu hay là lúc tết chờ nó xong chạy các cử trừ lúc tết chờ nó do qua lên nó là chỉ có một cái nó nó có tàu nó cho trong này nó có tàu xẻo này nó mà tôi nhớ tôi chỉ là tôi năng của một cái cho cái của người yuan chùa nó người thiệt bao người thiệt phanh mang người thiệt trò chơi tàu vì thiệt bé mua tên nhớ tên chỉ tên tụ tôi chỉ bao lù có chỉ một cái ta là ở đây cho lâu hay giả chúa ta đầu từ bon chơi chỉ có đó là cho chế chỉ cho cái cầu đầu cho công hỏng tới 3 chỉ tàu nữa họ chẳng chân cha bây giờ thiệt nữa hay năng thiệt nữa cho cái nữa là cha chạy tàu nữa trời đi lúc tết chờ nó cho dài hay năng đầu thiệt nữa cho cái cầu nữa thiệt 3 tàu nữa họ giờ biết chuyện thiệt lên đó chỉ biết trên một cầu xứ trên một cầu ta là những cầu chỉ tàu trên nó là cho nó bảo nó tụ khen chỉ tàu một chỗ cho cái cho dùng trời đi lo xong chạy chứ hử nữa ai cũng lo đủ có sáng của hồ đoài để do biết cả có tư biết của cho cùng hầu là lo bây giờ tổng mua được hay năng tôi chát xảy cho tăng mạnh cho nữa chứ bây giờ lúc tết chờ mà yêu thanh ta chỉ lúc tết chờ nó chỉ trong年头nó chỉ cho cái cần nó thêm 3 tuần nữa sư ở chờ.
So in probation, I want to say 99.9% of clients that come on to probation are mandated by the judges to take a domestic abuse cognitive counseling group. And you know, just in my experience in probation, the programming is like anything, whether it be chemical dependency treatment or domestic abuse counseling. I've seen it be as effective as what Dirk touched on as the client. It's almost like a change of lifestyle. I mean, if you're with your life partner and you know you're a certain way, it's going to be really hard to change. But you know, the group in itself is not meant to rehabilitate a person, an individual, especially if they have been that way for their whole lives. However, you know, it's mandated down by the courts, not just, you know, to prove that they're doing well on probation, but it's to educate the client on a different way of thinking, not only to not reoffend, but also to have a successful relationship with their life partners. So I've seen, you know, guys that come in and they tell me exactly what I want to hear, and they go out and reoffend. And then I see guys that come onto probation and they're I don't want to say scared, but they complete the course. They realize what they did was wrong. They hold themselves accountable. They're receptive, and I never see them again in probation. So it's I don't want to say crapshoot, but it's 50-50 on the client, and you know probation, at least on excuse me, at least on the probation side, we're not just checking off boxes. We're working with them outside of just the programming, because I've seen clients go to treatment 10 plus times, and the moment they're out after 28 days, they go back to the same environment and they do the same thing. So to answer the question, it can be effective if the client wants to incorporate it into their lives.
Thank you. The next question, you'll probably be able to answer it too. When perpetrators take these classes, how long does these classes take? And upon completion of these classes, do the perpetrators have any contact or follow up with their progress and see how they are improving with their relationships? Thầu cho chế nên mù cờ cho cha nó lờ, nếu xí hờn đầy mồ đi cha, thiết thầu cờ tía cho cha nó, bố mô lên từ tàu cá trâu chế nên nó, hãy chọn tờ lỡ cho kế, lòng ô rong thía lỡ cho kế hồ sinh, bố giống mùa rong chú chú.
So these courses, they range anywhere from 18 weeks to around 24 weeks. As far as follow-up, we in probation, we if we have a caseload of 30, then it's a caseload of 60, because we're working with the client and we're working with the victims. We reach out to the victims initially when they come onto probation, and if there's not a no contact order in place, we do communicate with the victim and the client as well. As far as like progress, I mean, once they're done with programming, we're we're working with them, not just case planning, but, change talk, using evidence-based practice within, Ramsey County that we practice to help clients become successful as far as like, not just, oh, I'm done with probation, but, to not be back on probation, to do better in the community. And, by doing that is, covering, like in the case planning, covering their values, their goals, short-term goals, employment, education, some, evidence-based practice studies that, have proven to, improve a client's life if they, succeed in certain things. So.
Thank you. Anybody else as the panelists had anything to add to that before I continue to the next question? Okay, I'm just going to continue on to the next question so that we would have time for any Q&A from the audience. So the next question is, beyond courses, are there other methods that can help an individual change their behaviors? 我哋大家佢哋咗餐咯，本我哋做好嘅把字改咗呢咯，去用出學孔字。
So I'm going to add on to what I just said. And as important as supervision is after someone gets arrested for domestic violence, whether it be a misdemeanor or felony, they go through the court system, they get placed on probation, and they complete programming. So do you just let them go, or do you keep them on probation? That's still up for debate. Because there have been studies, I don't have quotes today, but there have been studies where overdoing probation can be bad for an individual's success. However, as far as working with the individual for their term on probation, it's not just any police contact, any victim contact. Did you get did you get a job? There's more to that. I know sometimes probation is misunderstood. We're not just checking in with clients to make sure they're not doing anything, because obviously, we see them once every 2 weeks, and they could be doing many things that are not good during the 2 weeks. But that's where case planning comes in. That's where using cognitive planning, change talk, and working with individuals that do want to change, and helping them not just change their way of thinking, but also reaffirming them on things that they do well, to hopefully avoid recidivism in the future.
Thank you. The panelists who answer this question, if you guys forgot, is Neng Xiong is a corrections officer or probation officer for Ramsey County. And continuing on to our questions, we only have 2 more, so that we'll have time for any Q&A from the audience. Please just bear with me. Question number 7 for the panel. As for the victims of these domestic violence cases, how many in your experience seek out services to remove themselves from these situations? Protection, emergency shelters, or hotline? And what type of barriers do you think prevents Hmong families from seeking out such services? 我喺上度有年我做咗啲名咯，只是後生，這裡可個包我俾出到到冇做咗幾百個裏到咗啲名咯，xử理我當到地睇，冇夠查冇事情，你有換錢幾百，天日我個撒係啲有貨，你有做有錢冇老冇做。Any of the panelists?
So working with victims, typically I try to get in contact with them if the offender is still in custody, to try to have that one-on-one conversation with them. Unfortunately, a lot of times I see victims getting mad that their offender was arrested. for reasons such as that offender is their primary child care provider. If he's in jail or if she's in jail, who's gonna watch my kids? Maybe the offender is the primary financial provider. If they're in jail, how is my rent gonna get paid? So many times working with victims, I see them wanting things to go back to the way they were rather than getting the help that they need for that family piece of it. Many times we also run into the offender breaking the victim's phone, so they have no way to get help even if they wanted it. And a lot of it I see also is embarrassment, not only within their family, with friends, community, that they're arrested and they're in this situation. So many times, you know, we do put these resources into our victims. We provide these orders for them. We give them opportunities to get out, and it's easier to go back to what it was because of the things that I just mentioned.
So domestic violence is not something new, you know, and I'm saying the obvious there, but you know, there are yesterday, you know, when I pulled the statistics, there's about over 670 calls for service last year alone in terms of domestic calls for service. This is pulled directly from the ECC dashboards on the websites, and credits to them for that. And of those, there were 3 major cases that hit the media. So it seems like you know, this problem is starting to surface. Those numbers does not mean that there is no domestic case in any specific community or in the Hmong community. But those numbers do mean that there is awareness and there is a need to start really focusing in on domestic violence in the Hmong community. And you know, I like to use the comparison of a flashlight, right? If you shine a flashlight at night in your area, you only see what you see. And the reason being for that is because, you know, the Hmong community is a very new immigrant group to the U.S. And tying that into barriers is what's unique about the Hmong community is there's a proverb that the Hmong elders use. Hmong elders here will probably kind of help me with this too. But the proverb goes, Hmong chua Hmong tao, shuo chua shuo tao, right? And verbatim, it means Hmong medication, Hmong brew. Chinese medication, Chinese brew. And there's no offense to any, I don't mean that in offense to any person of Chinese ethnic minority background. It's just that proverb dates back to way back when the Hmong people, you know, migrated from China before the Indochina War. But the content of that is that the Hmong community have the Hmong way of doing things, right? Funerals, weddings, domestic, ishaoki, where you deal with domestic issue. And then there's the non-Hmong way. And that proverb, or that content extends from that. So, in terms of services, in terms of law enforcement, we have to identify what that Hmong way is and who's qualifiable to make those decisions. You know, Molly talked about victims who are in court testifying, trying to get their offender out of court because did we resolve the domestic problem with that particular family at home the Hmong way, and now she's trying to come back and bring everything to normal so that life can continue, or there are other influencing factors that was dealt with a non-Hmong way. And we see that over and over and over, and when it ties into domestic violence, where the Hmong way makes the final call in terms of sending the family back together and making the life work out, or their lives to work out, you can already see the danger in that. And so I want to tie this all together, and from the law enforcement perspective, and what I see is who is qualifiable to design that Hmong way, and you know what is it? so that professionals, so that nonprofit organizations, so that the community, so that us as Hmong people can come together and really work off of that, and maybe, just maybe, we can start developing best practices or rules and regulations, which can develop into policies, and legislations can be moved to cater to the Hmong people and the Hmong way. So, you know, it's not, I can't put my finger on any particular person or entity or group and blame and say, it's because of the Hmong community, it's because of them, and they need to change the Hmong way, or I cannot blame the family, or I cannot blame, you know, any identity. It's everybody's fault and it's everybody's responsibility, but how do we bridge that gap, right? How do we make that Hmong way become official? And I think that's where we start. And that start is here today. And I see a lot of important people. I see law enforcement officers in the audience. I see leaders from the Hmong community. I see professionals who can really make a lot of changes in the community. And this is where it starts. And I think these are just starting to surface as the statistics are showing that we're just barely starting to scratch the surface of domestic violence in the Hmong community. But unfortunately, lives are being lost. And, you know, tragic events are taking place in the meanwhile while we're doing that. So trying to tie everything together and answer the questions of barriers, that's all.
So, if anything, for me, I work with a fair different types of victims. There's the victims who want everything possible to be done about it. Like, they want them arrested, they want them gone, they want them out of their life completely. And then there's the ones who, you know, want to go about how to remove a restraining order. It breaks my heart every single time I have to help a victim dismiss a restraining order, because I don't know what could possibly happen next, and who knows, I might see them again in a few months, which is something I don't want to have to experience or have to expect from them to come back. And so we serve annually about 1,000 Hmong participants every year and their children. And like I mentioned, if they are Hmong speaking, cases get delegated to me right away, because I'm a Hmong speaking advocate and the only one. And if they do speak English, they speak and they work with any other advocate. And so I think what types of barriers that prevents Hmong families from being able to seek out such services like restraining orders, shelters, the hotlines, things like that, is support from the people who matter the most in their life. That's the number one thing. Just because, as he mentioned before too, there are cases in which there's a domestic incident that happened, and then the victim goes and figures it out with the family members and comes back and tries to undo the criminal system part by herself by trying to support the, you know, abuser. But I always say, and it breaks my heart too, because there was a case that I had recently where it was really a lethality case, but the victim was like, it's my fault. It's my fault. I could have did something else. But I was like, no, it's not your fault, because the person could have chose to not pick up that hammer and hurt you. The person could have chose to not punch you in the face. The person could have chose to walk away and not do any of the things that they did to you, because they didn't think about you in the moment. They didn't care about you in the moment. And so in that moment, you gotta focus on yourself. And so I feel like it's encouragement from the people who matter, because I have Hmong victims who are moms and grandmothers who have children who are telling them to go back to their relationships. When they go back in the relationship, nothing has changed. The dad is just calmer than the way they were before and wasn't as angry, or even worse, they might be even more angry that they came back. And so it's support from people that matter the most, and just telling them that you are there for them and that you could be someone there that can listen to the things that they're going through. Because as, you know, victims come to reach out for me for help, I gradually learn more and more details about the things that they've experienced. And I'm like, wow, you're so tough for still being in the relationship, even after you've been through that so many times, and even after you've been damaged so many times, you're still with him. And that makes you a strong woman. But now it's about you. It's about figuring out what makes you happy, what makes you better, because he doesn't clearly care about what you're doing or what matters to you. So that's just me.
I also just want to add that part of the reason is of the Hmong clan system that we're so closely tied together, and so sometimes when the victim come over to the elders or the clan leaders, they always say, hey, là dân nên trái rong lại, cho nên cho trái rong lại. Rồi để tụi tu mỗi con tàu là do đi chả là tụi thọ bé rồi đó, để có bé và vì là dân nên rong, là dân nên trái rong. So tụi the daughter or tụi China nên trái trả, nếu chỉ muốn nên mua trả là nên trái trả chỉ muốn và mua chuyện nhỏ là na chuyện you always go back. Reporter inspector thứ hai ở lò thì you know the daughter they always feel that they might be disowned by the clan, and so sometimes I think it's gonna have to stop with the elders, and it has to stop with the clan leader, especially the Akin Council. We probably have to educate the Hmong community about restructure our system and the way we used to do things. To better the community, because society changed and we have to realize that we have to follow society and what we used to teach our kids and our children, and the way we used to handle things may not work in this modern society, and so it has to change for the better of the community.
Hi, my name is Sam again. I just wanted to add that as an educator, so domestic violence. Domestic violence involves so many things. They involve unhealthy behavior, they involve verbally abuse, they involve emotionally abuse. And so nghĩa thế chỉ hai lũ chỉ học sinh một số chế sinh đầu thì impact được chấm nhiều as well. And so nhất chấm nhiều tôi cần đó lần trai lần chỉ kia cho giáo sư phụ vì hay là lần trai hay là giáo sư phụ dùng mỗi lần chạy tàu phòng là nhiều là gì thế này dùng. And so lần chỉ cả kia cho nên là gì, ok cho sư phụ tổ chức cần đó. Để khi nếu ở tụi mình nhiều cho các nên chỉ dùng nếu ở tụi mình nhiều chỉ bao cho nó tự thả ở tụi mình nhiều share ở tụi mình chỉ sát tôi cần đó. All that play a factor of the child as grown up. And so their behavior now create a long-term effect for them as they grow up. And when they're in an environment like that, it's okay, my dad does it. So carry on into like a future as well. And so something like that, we have to really think about not just the adult, but for them as well. Because this is a lifelong effect for them. Impacted emotionally and physically as growing up. And so, situation like this, too, instead of, she not think about because and they're going to see that, it's okay, too. So it will be a carry-on generation of domestic abuse into the family. So that's something that we have to really think about and make that change.
Thank you. So I'm going to continue on to the last question to our panelists, and then we will have about an hour and a half for Q&A from the audience. So if you have any questions, please write it down and get it ready to have our panelists answer your questions. So the last question here from our committee is, in your opinion, what do you think are gaps the community needs to address to ensure Hmong families are receiving continued support and care when it comes to domestic violence? What do you think are the necessary next steps in addressing domestic violence for the Hmong community? Nhân tới có cho kế sáng này, các sáng hai địa cho kế tu chùa, và lưu dây rồi yếu tàu lòng thua tờ, cho chế nâng mong. 我到在天时，就给把温度住，头了冇做错，就给只是后生，要打起点。我哩个上海的，当地呢，可有做到我要打起点，天有了就到要得明，就给只是后生，要做梦路热路热。
我就。cú sao là thả ở bên là cho họ có ý sẵn lúc họ phía mình đầu bếp cho nhiều cho gì cho trong cho nó cho bỏ là cho tuôn xài cho chân để mình tu mình nhổ cần thâu cú sao là thả họ nó nhớ cho họ có ý sẵn bếp trong trời mà 一比到点那种个日子只是后生，比如点呢我都叫是谈问题，头呢我都叫了目中的我这能老是你叫成，头呢叫成了嘛多到好过一生，这要比过一生都知道那种包，比如啥呢目着的和你做警察。เขาที่อ้อกุศลหายนี่เนาะหายเจ้าโดชาอิชยอกีเราไปได้จงมงจะชัวตูแต่เราก็ชิมัวเนี่ยมัวจีชิมัวกึ่งมัวตีชิมัวตูเจ้าหน้าเจ้าอัวเกี่ยก็ยอจงดูแต่สิยอน้องอยากเพยเนาะพอตัวเราเจ้าก็เลยถอตัวเราก็ยิ่งเซ็งไปอยู่ป้าก็เขาที่ไปหายเจ้าเนี่ยได้ช่องก่อแล้วยอเกี่ยจงเกินเนี่ยจีสิเศร้าไอ้ยอก็ตาจะกิจเสียก็ชิมัวเนี่ยมัวจีชิมัวตูเจ้าหน้าเจ้าอัวป้าก็เลยถอตัวเราก็ยิ่งเซ็งไปอยู่ป้าก็ไปอยู่เดี๋ยวก็เต้นเหมือนเนาะที่อยู่มันในชีวิตเราจงเกินเนี่ยจีเขาถูกเกินเนาะกุศลหายหล่อจะถูกจะเกี่ยให้เดี๋ยวเป็นมงวันได้ไปจะมีตัวมีหนัวในจงเกินเนี่ยจีหลัวในจินยอดจะไปชีจ่าชีเจแต่น้องตามหมอไปตัวมีหนัวเดี๋ยวจะต้องมุกกุยชงเจริญรุ่นนั่งเลยเจสาเขียไปวิญญาณเลยถัวจะเกี่ยไปชีจ่าชีเจเลยเจตุนชายเนี่ยมุปออีตัวนั่งจีเจียจีตัวนั่งเจนเจจีตัวนั่งรุ่นนั่งหล่อตุนชายเดียกูถัวกูเนี่ยเทียบกูจริงเลยไอ้กูเขียมูกับกูจ้อนนอนก็จะเกี่ยชีเจเจตุนชายจะมือโยตัวอีตัวนั่งจีเจียนึกจะถัวไปซื้อตาชินึกปัวเนี่ยรุ่นนั่งอย่างนี้เรากูสร้างปัวหูโตไปจะตุนชายรัวแต่เราไปเจนังมองในตัวเราเด็กแถวนอในนอเราดูให้เดียฟรีดอนเจนี่มัวสายเดียลูกเด็กแถวนอย้อนตัวกูก้าจะเหล่าถอยอูนอติอูเลยวัวเตยาจงในจะปนเนี่ยตัวจะเกตุเชียเจียนอนในสายเดียกูตัวเจ้าเด็กแถวนอกูวัวยืดพังเทศเป้าจอกาเป็นมองโลนั่งเขาแต่มึงชื่อสีเขานอนะแต่ฉันกูท้องวัวหูเจ้าจอตู้จนใส่รถรัวย้อนในมัวจะแต่มึงสอดเจนังจะเกจิหัวสังในเตตู้เตกีเตมีตู้มีหนัวchỉ mua cái hậu sinh thọ này tua đó có gì sinh bên mua cho yon đó này đầu bên thiệt cho cái ba này giờ này nhà này chỉ tao tao cho này cho cái cầu thọ này tua đó có gì sinh bên không có gì sinh sao là chỉ khó thêm mua cho cái nó đầu cho bên trên đường mông ai cho luôn nó cũng sáng mua pha đi nó ai bên cho nhiều cho chỉ cho lùa lùa nên cho chúng hay tiệt bên tua lúc tích nó bên bảo tàu bên tủ nâng tủ chu bự cái cho ta sẽ biết bảo trì tàu tròn trà tiếng ngay đại tàu vì bây giờ nhau mong thì bây muốn chờ thì mong thì là bây cho thâu tỏ bây giờ bảo trì tàu thì cũng khó luôn cũng sáng nó thả đi nó rồi cho tu cho kỹ cho mình tu mình nhòa cho tu xài cần tàu nên nhà nên chỉ tàu tàu nên giá tôi đã học của ý sản bây giờ đó nên còn xe khó nên nhà thế nên chỉ hay có tàu giờ nên ấy còn nên tới cái cờ cho tu nhiều hỗ trợ tân cờ chỉ ta đi nó là cũng thoáng của ý lò trâu cho nhiều cho chỉ cho cứ cho ti là biết cho lùa biết tôi nhau lúc tây chờ từ biết cho tàu cho dùng sự trợ lúc tây chờ nợ xong chạy ca cử trừ hử họ lúc tây chờ nợ giờ có chỉ tàu có giá được cho công hộ là do chát xài đâu có ai cũng lo được cũng sáng một thả ý lò nó vượt trâu nè.
No, thank you, Council Member Jukindaya. Any of the other panelists want to answer this question?
You know, I know that the domestic violence issue, Hong Kong is saying to tackle our issue now for the past 2 years. One of the problems that I see within the Hmong community is that when people Hmong被起春夜多个那样 okay? So bây giờ bây giờ bây giờ nhiều đôi cờ, tất cả những một cờ tôi kể về cờ ingest your information bây giờ cho tôi nữa bây mong chỉ cho nhiều hơn đó, nên được bỏ tao là thì tên tên mình đi cùng mấy tên bạn là những khó và tên mình ở trong rồi bên một community, thì khi mình muốn chơi thì bây giờ tên không nói nữa, sau đó thì chỉ tôi cờ nó này là chỉ bên mong mình ít cho chỉ cho nhiều đôi cờ, đó là bây giờ cũng trên tôi thì tại sao vì thì bên muốn mua cho tên mình nó mà cũng trên tôi thì bên ở tôi bên một cái resource we have to find a way to target the community and we have to find a way to go to them instead of they coming to us. That's the only way to solve khó tên này nó khó tại sao nó bên bỏ đồ để cho domestic violence đừng dây share hơn là within our community tao do nhiệt tí sinh tao do nhiệt tí sinh chê tao do bây giờ điều giờ bây tụ nhà tụ sai tụ bố nó phải sử dụng tụ thà okay there gotta be a way to prevent that from happening there gotta be a way for us to go and educate the community again talking all that it's never tolerated in a community it's never accepted I'm just thinking there got to be a better way for us to tackle this issue than to educate. Because I know that bên Hmong là chỉ chuan nhiều đồ cỡ na.
I agree as well too. I think the biggest gap is educating elders as well too. Just because growing up, I have had personal experience since witnessing domestic violence situations happen before my eyes with aunts and uncles and relatives of my own, in which I've seen mediations happen which have not been useful and have not been helpful in any situation at all. And I think the main thing is getting rid of those stereotypes about the types of resources that are out there to help victims. Because, for example, domestic violence, order for protection, I've heard victims tell me that and so they consider that if you were to do it, it's a divorce paper. But what do they not know? That it's an order for protection that protects the victim for up to 2 years. And as long as the person who is the respondent in the case, abides by the order, does not do anything new, basically changes himself and doesn't, basically violate the restraining order in any way, then that doesn't allow the victim to basically go for more, basically, in a sense. And so you have to follow the king and understand that order for protections are not divorce documents. They're protection orders protecting the victim who is not feeling safe, who is feeling that if they don't have this piece of paper to prohibit the respondent from being able to, see them, talk to them, touch them, anything at all, then they feel that they will be in danger, that they feel that they will die. Domestic violence shelters, growing up, all I heard is "jingo fa," but that's such a bad terminology because back in the day, jingo fa basically is a woman who leaves her husband, but it's not. It's a domestic violence shelter for victims who are afraid for their safety, who need a safe place to be. They need safety, security. They need even a moment to think and collect their thoughts about what their next steps are. And so I think, if anything, just getting rid of these stereotypes in our community and educating elders about, what these resources are and what our purpose is basically here as a legal advocate. Because I know I've heard from people that I've been seen as somebody who ruins people's marriages and lives, but really I'm not. I'm here to help people who need help when they need help.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm kind of on the microphone a little more than anyone, and my family try to keep it from me during karaoke sessions and whatnot too, so excuse me for that. But, in terms of coming off of the question, the gaps in the community, and I might have to put some of my ECC friends in the spot here, but in terms of building bridges, coming from the law enforcement government side, when there are issues that come up in the community. Last year, there was a very tragic domestic murder-suicide case. And it's very impactful, and it specifically stuck with me. As a matter of fact, one of our investigator, Molly, was the lead on that particular case. But it's especially impactful because children were involved. And because of that, that's one too many cases already. Believe it or not, between then and today, there were many, many murder-suicide cases in between that time span. And so, because of that, law enforcement is reaching out to say, help us, right? Help us, Hmong community. Now, who is that, right? Who represents the Hmong community? Is it the leaders? Is it my clan? Is it the 18 clan council? Is it the schools that are doing things with the Hmong community? And so, credits to the Hmong 18 council because they are there trying to represent that. And there is a lot of work to do in terms of that. As a matter of fact, I was one of the pushing and the influence of trying to make something happen in addressing domestic issue and raising awareness. From the government side, from law enforcement side, when a community does not say or do anything, we're assuming that there is nothing going on. And you hear about other groups, and maybe some of my colleagues can kind of talk about what happens in other communities as well too. But when there's the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? If we as a community do not speak up, we do not raise awareness, we do not have conversations such as this, then the default assumption is there's really no issues. And so part of building that and that gap requires all the stakeholders, and I strongly believe we have them in the room here. You know, especially the younger people who are here today, who are still going to college, because you're going to be sitting in our positions, you're going to be replacing us in the future. And how we design that for them is vital to how we as a community come together right now. So the gaps in it requires a stakeholder, and the stakeholders are all of us.
Thank you, Inspector Chinuli. Any of the panelists want to tackle this answer before we close up for Q&A from the audience?
Well, I don't have any answer, but I have a comment. It is most important for us, you had the nature she it's better, you had the pneumonia for the sake of the kids. Because you had them involved in domestic violence, it gives them displaced and doesn't give them a lot of hope in the future. And so by saying that domestic violence it's more than beyond the clans. It's more than beyond so kusate you had the violence. You know, try to help them out. Because the domestic violence only beyond clan leaders, beyond clan communities. And so you have to basically do something about it. You suffer thousands.
Thank you. Anything else from our panelists here before we continue on? Well, I just want to take this time to thank all our 7 panelists, whether it's from Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, from St. Paul Intervention, or from legal attorney Gong Chu from his legal law firm, to our council member, and to Corrections Officer Neng Xiong. Please help me give me a warm hand of applause for all our panelists. They did a wonderful job answering the questions and tackling these questions. This is a very hard and difficult issue for our Hmong community. In the past, it's pretty much a black and white topic where our community leaders and clan leaders did not want to touch on this topic because it's too sensitive. But as we move forward into the 21st century and with Hmong 18 Council and our supporters and different organizations, I believe that we can tackle this issue, and I believe that we can find resources and helps to victims and perpetrators and help them find their way through any domestic abuse situations. Going forward, I also like to thank all our supporters and co-supporters of this event. A big thank you goes out to Hmong 18 Council, Hmong College Prep Academy, the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, VU Law Office, Early Childhood, and Council on Asian Pacific Minnesotans. Thank you guys for helping co-sponsor this event. Without you guys, this event wouldn't have been able to be done today in a very professional way for all our community and our leaders. Before we continue on to the Q&A or the question and answer session, I'd like to take this time to tell the audience that we have a couple of tables out in our front, and there's tables with resources and brochures and cards for their organizations. We have cards and brochures from the Hmong Family Strengthening Helpline. They have a table or a booth out in front. Please grab brochures from them and business cards. We also have St. Paul and Ramsey County Domestic Abuse Intervention Project. We also have the Early Childhood Family Education, Hmong 18 Council. We have Hmong College Prep Academy, who is also one of our biggest co-sponsors. They have a table up in front. Continue on to another one is VU Law Office. He has some brochures and business cards out there if anybody ever need any legal advice or any help within the community. And then we also have some business cards and brochure from ECC or 911, which is our Emergency Communications Center. And we have a few of our ECC employees here, and they can help answer any questions or if anybody have any questions on emergency calls. Before I close here, I want to thank all the panelists again for your time, for coming out and being panelists and speaking on domestic violence here. And once again, I'd like to invite Council Ching Va Vu up here. He is the chair for our Family Development Committee for closing remarks. So please give a hand and welcome Council Ching Va Vu again to close this event. And I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your important schedule to come here today and to join us. And hopefully in the future, this is something that we can help the community and resolve these issues. So Council Ching Va Vu, please give me a hand in welcoming him again to the stage.
Okay, thank you for all our panels who are here today to share their expertise and what they know and what we can do to heal this community going forward. So before I close, I would like to call our president of Hmong 18 Council, Paul Xiong, to come up to the stage and say something before I close it out.
Okay, chào lúc sáng đời bây giờ guest panel thiên đời lúc committee thiên đời bây giờ thì cho chỉ số đời giờ của một mình chỉ hỗ trợ của tàu tàu sản đấu là thiên tất cả lo của những sẽ này họ paying gọi là bây giờ nhiệt chế số đời của này tàu bỏ thiên tàu witness bỏ là giờ tàu trâu cái chỉ cho làm đời cái tụi chỉ tụi cái là cái tụi partner họ nói giờ những concern những họ bây của Isaac nữa, của lo lù của thọ hại thiệt rồi bây giờ nhiệt chế cho chỉ chế số đó, bây tuổi nhau thì chờ nó tiền đây cũng y là, giờ có bỏ hay tiền có tụ chỉ cái, nhưng mà chỉ cho là giờ bây cái tụ từ bỏ đi bắt đầu đi cầu hay thưa hại, đi cầu công chức phủ hại, hay thưa công chức phủ hại, bây giờ tàu report đó họ tạm loa chỉ cái ba tôi tụi chị tụi cậu ta lấy tụi phong dư họ nói nhau tới chờ nó chỉ hai thì tụi chị vô thể được tụi nhẹ chứ giờ bé bỏ thì tụi nhẹ vô thể được tụi chị là bé như kiểu tàu hồ tạm lưỡi vậy nhau tới chờ nó vì bé mò vào hồ chi luôn giờ hai thì tụi chị vô thể được tụi nhẹ bé số đời giờ tàu hồ tạm lưỡi giờ bé bỏ chỉ ta đi ta cho nhẹ chế của hai đứa nàyนี่ยังจะเนี่ยเจอย่าไปจะสินังจีมอนังไปว่าจะตาโลนังนะนี่จะเนี่ยเจวันนี้จอนี่เจนังเจนี่เราตรงนี้ตัวจีเนาะหมู่วันนังเชียร์เรายังมุ่งถอยเจนังยอดเชียร์ละนี่ยังว่า a lot of sacrifice ตอนนี้บอกให้เดียย่อนี่ตัวจีตัวเกิดเนาะจีลงนี่ละนี่จะตรงเชียร์เก็บป้าซื้อเลยให้เดียเนี่ยเนาะปตาบุตรบอกไม่ตัวหมอเนาะให้เดียมั่วลูกเอเจนซี่khu đó là có lần chơi cái ba là do khu đó bé của Israel bây giờ ba nên bỏ đi ba tàu giờ bé ba chủ tàu bây giờ hiện nay một cho resource cái ta ít tung mỏ ta thứ hai thì là lúa organization đó có lời ba này cái ô châu đó tụ bỏ ta nó cũng là thì là mua lúa nhà nó cùng hồng tới nhà ba cho nhà nó domestic violence là cho victim nó họ nói những họ dùng nữa thank you giờ có mua cost thế giờ có mua content information mua share the bé của Israel and from now on bây giờ quân cho nên thế giờ là ba lúc kia mình có bé vợ mình là toàn đây cho cho nhà bé bỏ cho tới mình đi hay thì chúng ta là nó cho nên chỉ需多老早thì lúc mà thì ta là nó mỗi cái sự sinh viên đầu tiên cú giờ tôi bắt hàng của you say you heard cú nhưng I feel very painful cú chỉ sao bỏ tới họ rồi nó cả hai bên bên lúc community cú sao cả bên cho nên chỉ số đó một tới mình chế kế ba sau hai tiếng một tới mình thì yêu nghề yêu chỉ lấy yêu chỉ để chơi我对这个你让人家去过离婚了这里让了我离婚的有觉得我对有的要领导不得听还得莫好 discussion 连后还得要头个莫单门人去给巴来着 resources counselor 要你只有的还知道了问题 counselor 的你干老让钱当路要头莫单门的好 violence 了 yếu tố hồ tầm luôn tí thái cho abuser cho nó có lợi như nó lấy cho perpetrator nó có lợi sao chỉ tao ta mình chỉ tao vô là để con nói sự thế bên bóng của ý sinh của encourage bây giờ câu cho mùa cho chỉ chế cho số tụ này yếu tố này nó là cái situation đó là tao biết tao sẽ cái ba này để quan trọng ta này thank you.
All right, thank you for President Paul Xiong for making this statement. And I would just like to say that we heard your voices today of our brothers and sisters up on the seat in the balcony. And we just wanted to say that we heard your voices and we wanted to work together with you. This is a healing process. This is the working process. This is something that we initiated and started, and we will be working together with these professionals so that we can create a better future for our families and our children. And I wanted to say thank you for all of you to come here today and to join us today. You all have a good day. Thank you.